Here we are. Good evening. Young women are sexually frustrated, young as well as middle aged, old. They're all sexually frustrated. And it's not because they don't want it, it's not because they aren't, liberated enough to go out and live a promiscuous lifestyle if they want to. It's because the men that they are dating and hooking up with are not getting the job done, and they have effectively checked out many of them. We are currently living through, I don't know, arguably, and you tell me what you think, but arguably we might be living through the greatest sexual drought, at least in modern history, if we look at percentages. While the internet promised us, that we would have this golden age of connectivity, the reality for women, particularly women in their 20s, is a cycle of low effort, low desire, and zero satisfaction, both emotionally with relationships and sexually. And tonight, I'm going to share with you a story of a sex starved young woman, and we'll talk about what nobody really wants to talk about or admit. And that's that we're dealing with a generation of men that have been chemically and psychologically neutered, almost castrated by two silent killers, and that is chronic porn consumption that rewired their brain because they started when they were children, and global testosterone collapse. At least certainly nationally, the testosterone rates have plummeted over the last few decades. Most of the first world, that is the case. And I mean, we may have data on third world and other places, see what that's like. But we seem to be in a testosterone crisis that contributes to this problem, and a chronic case of porn consumption with younger men. All right. And so if you feel like dating is dead because of how women are acting, and you've noticed that your own drives to want to participate in the dating market or even in your own relationship or marriage has been reduced or dwindled, right? You're not alone in that. There's a lot of people who feel that way, and there's a lot of reasons why. There are a lot of reasons women behave the way that they do, right? There's a lot of reasons women are like the way that they are right now in the dating market, entitled and bitchy and low effort and aloof. And those reasons have nothing to do with men, it has everything to do with them and their social conditioning, right? And their problems. So it's not all men's fault. But that being said, men are not contributing to women feeling the desire to want to fix any of it, because men are being terrible at being attractive as well as delivering sexual satisfaction. And that is one of the reasons why women across the board at all ages, but particularly young women, are fed up and frustrated with men. And that frustration shows up in political ideology, on the internet, in your office, at Thanksgiving, wherever, right? It shows up. There's a general divisiveness between men, and women are frustrated with men, and they're not being sexually satisfied by men, the higher percentage. And I would say it's probably gotten worse, sexual satisfaction from women, and being able to seek that out through their relationships, through men, not through toys and devices and whatever else. I mean, I would say that is what the problem is, a big part of the problem. And most guys do not have the intestinal fortitude to work through these problems because their brains have been rewired by a screen. So now here we are, 2026, and we're in a biological and sociological emergency, and nobody is talking about it. It's not being talked about. It's not being discussed that anywhere that I know of where it's anything mainstream, you know, and here's why this pleasure gap is wider than it's ever been, and what that means for our future relationships. We're going to talk about that. But I'm going to tell you a story. Okay. This story is a story that somebody wrote asking for advice, and it's a woman in her sexual prime, and she's starving for sex. This woman needs to get smashed, right? And she can't get it. And it's a problem. And that is a story that I think is prevalent, that people are just not, women aren't talking about it. People are not talking about it. I think a reason why. So here's a number of things. Okay. You had, like, the internet and the social narrative is always behind what's actually going on usually. Okay. So, like, the new trend right now, or the thing that's actually happening in 2026, most people aren't aware of that, because first of all, you have to be aware of sexual dynamics to begin with, and the sexual marketplace and the behaviors of men and women. That already is a challenge. Most people, to include researchers, are mostly unaware of male and female behaviors, and what's actually happening and what's driving those behaviors. So there's a general societal unawareness of what's actually going on. So that's part of the problem. Then you have people that'll talk about what's going on, and they've talked about that 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And then with things like YouTube, and now especially with AI systems, nobody has an original thought. And the algorithms are not promoting original thought as much as they're promoting whatever supports the narrative that they believe is going to get them the most sales, essentially. What's going to keep people on platforms longer so that they can be advertised to. That is what the algorithms force down people's throats. And so you don't get original thoughts. Have you noticed that when you're scrolling? There's a lot of thoughts, whether you like those thoughts or not. That's the same fucking parroted thoughts that somebody else said. And most content creators who claim to be experts are really just repeating in different ways the same thing that other content creators are repeating. They're all copying off of each other. So you don't get an original thought. So you get an idea that resonates somehow, it's divisive, or it's controversial, right? So it gets attention. So you get some narrative or something that, like female promiscuity, for example, and that whole discussion, the discussion of women banging tons of dudes and notch counts and that whole thing. That's all over now. That's mainstream being talked about, right? A few years ago, it was like a newer idea to talk about that and to point out, wow, a lot of women are railing through a ton of dudes and having these short-term relationships. And then somebody would scream, no, they're not, that's not true. And whatever, like, those are only the bad women. And so, like, you have this thing, this narrative and this discussion that was happening years ago, and everyone's been copying off each other to get their own likes and clicks. A lot of these people who are copying off of other people, they don't even realize they're copying. They think it's an original thought, but really it's not an original thought. They just binge watched, their content on YouTube from their own niche, and then went, oh, here's my idea. And then they say their idea and they think it's original. It's not, it's bullshit and whatever. Not bullshit. It's just they're repeating, right? What somebody else said. And so that's what you have. Well, then what happens is you get a delay. So what's happening in 2026? People aren't necessarily up on what's happening. I'm up on it because I get a pretty solid test sample of guys in the dating market. So I see what, through my coaching, I see what guys are dealing with. I see the trends with things like breakups, divorces, hooking up, short-term dating, long-term relationships. I see trends across the globe because of clients all over the world that are dealing with these things. And granted, they're all anecdotal, and it's all a test sample of people who would use my services, which many of them are, you know, doing quite a bit better than the average person. So, I realize it's a biased, if you will, test sample, but it does alert me to the changes in what's going on out there in the behaviors. Because I'm not single. I do have I have my long-term relationship, but if I were single and out there, it would still only be what I'm experiencing. And then I have a pretty, arguably, based on my results, a really high level of game and seduction skills. So what I'm experiencing is going to be the same thing the average guy is experiencing. So at any rate, what's actually happening out there, you don't get that news usually through YouTube, right? So what's still being talked about, from what I can tell, is just the high level of promiscuity that's out there. What's not being talked about is the sexual dissatisfaction rates being really high, higher than they've ever been before, as well as women checking out of the dating marketplace. So what you have now is this gap. You used to have a few years ago, it used to be women hit the dating market and they go promiscuous. So unless there was an exception to the rule, like they were, you know, really long-term relationship minded, or, and really involved in their church, for example, and just then they were really sexually conservative in westernized, countries, United States, Europe, Australia, right? Not necessarily, somewhere in the Middle East or wherever, but in most westernized countries, to include many not so westernized like Latin America and Asia, the trend was high promiscuity. Girls start having sex early, they're promoted to do that through social conditioning, sexual liberation, go have all the experiences sexually while you're young, and then you settle down by the time you're 30, right? That was the narrative. That still is the narrative to a degree, and that's what women were doing, by and large, it seemed like. And your cohort of women who have checked out in your female incels is much, much smaller. That cohort of female incels have grown to a pretty large number today. And so now you have these two cohorts. Women, you have one where women are doing the promiscuous thing, and that's what you hear about all the time. Those interviews on the street where some content creator hangs out in an area like Miami where there's tons of hoes, right? And interviews them, and then they come across as hoes, and then everybody's like, oh, look, women are hoes, right now. But really, that's just Miami outside of a certain nightclubs and a certain nightlife, right? At certain times a year, maybe, and stuff like that, right? So it's a very narrow test sample, it seems, and it's made to look like all of these girls are just railing through tons of guys. And the reality is there are a lot of girls doing that, and that may be who you're getting exposed to if you're trying to date. But that number, that cohort, is a bit smaller than it was. And what you have instead are girls who have checked out of the marketplace, even attractive women, who have just absolutely checked out, and who are sexless or sex starved. They get boyfriends, they get into these relationships with somebody their own age, and the guy can't fuck them because they're porn brained. That's now what's happening. That is an epidemic that you've not seen at any other time in history. And it's happening right now, and it's happening at large numbers. The researchers haven't even had the thought to look at this yet. They're still stuck on promiscuity and getting actual data for notch counts. The researchers in academia cannot get an accurate count of what girls are doing out in the sexual marketplace. they still think and go with averages like numbers of 6 and 7. It's not an accurate representation of women who are in the promiscuous cohort. All right. And so, like, it's in, and there's a number of reasons. I've done videos on that, and I don't want to get too wrapped up in that for this stream, but it's like they're not even caught up on the old trend of high promiscuity for most girls to even catch up to this new trend, which is female incel stuff, incel behavior. And it's not, and a lot of these women are like that because here's what happens, right? These young girls are growing up in front of with screens, just like the guys. And the guys are addicted to pornography, and they start that when they're 9, 10 years old because nobody's watching them. They get curious. Next thing you know, their mammalian brain is hyperstimulated by porn. And now they have a porn addiction. They've completely rewired their brain around sex by the time they're in their 20s. And now they can't fuck, and they don't know how to build a high intensity sexual experience for a woman. So they're giving and delivering lousier sex than men have ever delivered in our entire history. All right. And so that's what's going on the male side, but the female side, what's going on is addiction to their phones and social media. And so women are addicted to social media, addicted to attention and free attention. Men are addicted to simping and giving away free attention because they can't fuck. They're doing it by staring at a screen and jerking themselves. And that's the best they can do. And so they lack that real human connection. So they replace it with simping behaviors. And that gives these women tons and tons of just unending, stream of attention that's hollow, that's empty, and unsatisfying to these young girls and to women. So women are just getting an onslaught of tons of attention, which is all the attention that they don't want from guys who can't fuck them and who aren't attractive. And so that's what we got going on. And so women are drunk on all this attention. They have all these opinions that are, negatively skewed towards men because of the men that are dropping in their DMs. They have social anxiety now. Like, young girls can't just go out and like be social. A lot of them, they have a hard time with that. Even the pretty girls that go to social events that are extroverted have to like work themselves up to do it. They got tons of anxiety. They've tried on 12 different outfits. They're unsure about themselves. Like the lack of confidence in even attractive women nowadays has gone down so much at a large scale. And it, again, do I have data? Well, I have a bunch of data and research, in fact, but I mean, some of it needs to be done. I'm seeing the trends as somebody who is out in the field, so to speak, as an observer with people who are dating and getting in relationships, people in their 20s, 30s, 50s, 60s, doesn't matter. Okay. So people of all age categories, I'm observing them. It's part of what I end up doing for what I do for a living. So I'm seeing all this stuff going on, and I'm seeing these trends and changes. And I'm noticing these young girls now have this social anxiety that they've never had before. So they're not out there like they were from my generation and the millennials and, a little bit after that, where they're just like, going out on a girls' night, just getting railed. I mean, there are girls who do that still, but like these younger ones, a lot of very pretty younger girls in their 20s are stuck and glued to this device, and they can't go out. They can't even, when they go out, they don't enjoy themselves because they're just sitting there staring at their phones instead of connecting with other people, looking for opportunities for selfies, looking for opportunities to, take pictures. Like, they can't, their brain, girls are just like a guy's addicted to porn and just ruined his fucking brain. They've ruined their brains with this device. So nobody wants to talk about that. I mean, Twitter wants to, people on Twitter love to slam on dudes for being porn brain, but, and it is a problem, obviously. I'm mentioning it, but they're not talking about women and their social media addiction, right? And how that's ruining their lives, ruining their relationships, ruining their interactions with men. And so what you have is a situation where women are have social anxiety, they're aloof, they don't want to put effort into things. It takes a lot for them to go out. And so they get boyfriends because there's an unending onslaught of attention. So they look into their file of attention seeking men, and by the thousands, right? Hundreds. Okay. She's an attractive young girl, and then she gets a boyfriend. And usually it's a socially acceptable boyfriend. That's somebody she can, say is her boyfriend. You know what I mean? And these guys that they're getting in their own age category, these boyfriends they end up with, can't fuck them. That's really, at a large scale, a very large scale. Now, there always has been a gap, a pleasure gap between men and women, that's been around for a long time. Meaning, when I say a gap, meaning the guys are enjoying sex more than a lot of the girls. All right. There's always been a lack of knowledge of seduction from men out in the world. That's been around for a long time. And some of that is by evolutionary design. Okay. So, like a woman, it's so funny. I understand why some women will screech, but we'll talk about like misogynists. Like I don't, I think it's a dumb, low IQ argument just to call people a bunch of misogynists, or for guys to call women a bunch of whatevers, right? It's a low IQ approach. But that said, I do understand why, when you have researchers who just figured out not too long ago what the clitoris was. Like, it's literally like, it's only been a couple of decades now. We've had all this research on the human body, and it's only been for like a couple of decades that it was acceptable to the medical community and researchers that the clit was not just this, what you see on the outer side of the body. Okay, that the clitoris is an actual organ inside the body. You can reference some medical documents from different eras, you know what I mean, even to a couple hundred years ago, but that's pretty obscure, and it was not it's not considered mainstream. None of it ever was until now. But that was funny. There was some internet arguments of people claiming this was mainstream. They're just bullshit. And so, like, guys just they haven't figured out, like, they're so behind on understanding how the woman's body works and how pleasure works for her, and how, it's just insane to me how behind they are in that. You would think that they wouldn't be. You think, I find it very interesting. Why are people in the medical community not finding it as interesting as I do? I don't know. But at any rate, from an evolutionary side, there had been, and there still are, people out there that will claim that there is no there's no evolutionary benefit for the female orgasm because they're not expelling sperm or expelling eggs, so the orgasm is, just sort of some weird genetic leftover, which couldn't be further from the truth. The reason the female orgasm is the way it is because during tribal polyamorous times and during ovulation, if it's harder for a woman to orgasm, more difficult for her to reach orgasm, then she's going to have more sex, and potentially have more sex during ovulation with multiple partners, multiple men, which would increase her chances of getting pregnant. Plus, the higher her arousal is, so arguably the guy who's the most genetically attractive in the tribe that she can sleep with will bring her arousal level to a point where she might be able to squeeze out an orgasm or two. And so that's why the orgasm is more complex and difficult for a woman, because it made her have to have more frequent sex during ovulation in order to seek out the best genetic material for a baby. And the female orgasm creates an oxytocin dump, which shuttles whoever caused the orgasm. Okay. It shuttles that guy's sperm into the egg more readily than potentially other sperm that might be inside of her during a polyamorous history that we had. So there's your basic understanding of that, right? So like a lot of people don't even know this, don't even understand this, right? So there's always been like a pleasure gap for evolutionary reasons, okay? But it's gotten worse and worse and worse because men, young guys with low testosterone and porn brain and barely working penises can't seem to put a girl over the edge. Plus, they're weird and anxious and all kinds of problems these guys have. And these girls are weird and anxious because they're social media brains. So they get them as boyfriends. And then next thing you know, they have these abysmal sex lives. So I'm going to read you a story of exactly what I'm talking about. And there's a reason we're talking about this. There's a lot. If you're a single guy, right? There's a lot you can do with this information. Like, have you ever heard of, you know, in investing, right? When's it best to buy? When the price is low and when there's a bear market, right? We're kind of like that right now in our sexual history as human beings. We're in a bear market. What that means is if you learn seduction skills now and can fight through some of the bullshit that's going on in the dating market, you are going to have a flood of sexual opportunities in abundance. Guys that know how to seduce have an unending list of options and can choose really good, very pretty, very well put together mentally, emotionally women for long-term relationships and have great dating experiences with high-level women. Like there's all this stuff about, women having too high standards and their checklist and all this stuff, right? Six needs to be at least 6 feet tall, have so much money. He can't take me on a coffee date. He's got to spend money on me. He's got this, like all of this bullshit that gets talked about on the internet. But the reality is these women aren't fucking and they're not getting fucked right. And they're sex starved. So like, if you know how to seduce and deliver that, forget about it. It's like you just walk, you can pretty much walk in and get what you want. And all of the bullshit and the arguments about, oh, I'll only be with a guy if he does this, that, and the other. Here's all the hoops the guy has to jump through. There are no hoops for a guy who is attractive and who knows how to seduce. And that guy doesn't even have to have a lot of money. He doesn't have to meet any checklists. He doesn't have to be rich. He just has to be attractive and know how to be attractive. Genetically attractive helps. So if a guy is in like naturally in good shape, taller, good facial features, all that stuff, yeah, that's gonna put him over the edge easier. But you can be average or even below average in attractiveness. But if you know how to use your charisma and connect with that chick and seduce that girl, right? It won't matter. Like if you're delivering that opportunity for her to have mind-blowing orgasms in the bedroom, like it's a game changer. It changes everything about dating for you, everything. And if you haven't experienced that, it's because you're not there yet. Most of you guys, unfortunately, most guys have too fragile of egos to admit that they're just not there. They're average at best when it comes to sex, and they need to make those improvements, right? So the first step is admitting you have a problem. So if you haven't experienced women who are like basically willing to make a lot of concessions just to sleep with you, right? Then you probably are not delivering the kind of experience for women that would make that happen, right? That would warrant that. If you're not having that happen on a consistent basis, you're probably missing some stuff, right? Which is why you need to go to my community and sign up and get in for free and start asking questions. Now, before I get into the story, we'll talk about, okay, let's think about for a second why dark triad trait people tend to deliver a better sexual experience to a woman. Let's look at that for a second, okay? And you can compare that to your own non psychopathic brain to understand maybe where your approach is wrong and where things are falling apart. It's good to look at this, and this is why I have my course that's going to drop, right? And I tell you guys about it every live stream. So if you're a return person, you're going to get to hear about it again, all right? My course, the Psychopath's Playbook, because there's a number of traits that people whose brains are technically disordered brains, right? So I don't want you to become a psychopath. But the nature of their brain disorder does cause certain things to be easier for them. It gives them a little bit of a superpower, so to speak, in certain areas. Being able to deliver a higher sexual experience is generally a trait of psychopaths and narcissists. Um, Not all of them, but a lot of them. And the reason why is as follows, okay? A psychopath or a narcissist or even a sociopath, okay, which is basically someone who didn't have a genetically psychopathic brain, but had, maladaptive responses to really bad social conditioning like abuse and crime and serious things. And they turn into someone with antisocial personality disordered traits. They're emotionally erratic, anger issues, no emotional control, that kind of a psychopathic behavior. That's not a psychopath really by definition. That's a sociopath. All right, someone where the social environment growing up is what caused them to have these antisocial behaviors versus it being a condition genetically of their brain. But even them, like, these people tend to deliver a good sexual experience. Why is that? And any woman who happens to stumble upon the stream will be like, huh, it is kind of true that the toxic guys seem to fuck better. Why is that? All right, I'm going to break it down for you. And this is why I'm doing my course, because if you can get your inner game improved in certain areas, okay, like, just you'll be able to tap into your inner sexual power to be able to deliver a better experience. If you can deliver that, this is the golden ticket. This is the magical wand. If you can deliver a better sexual experience to where a woman feels good and fulfilled and satisfied having sexual experiences with you, you just brought a superpower with you into the game of dating and relationships. The whole game changes, guys, when you can put it down. And better than average, better than the other guys she's been with. Because you got to understand, even the promiscuous girls, right, who are doing the hoe face thing, they're not the women who've checked out. Instead, they're in that phase where they've checked in and they're hyper checked in and they're just eating up all the attention, trying to get laid whenever they can. And they're cycling through sexual partners. So even women who are doing that, there's a fair amount of them who do, are often doing that because they're not finding someone to deliver them a sexually satisfying experience. So they're sleeping with guys and one night stands, couple night stands, cycling through men because they're not coming. They're not orgasming. They're not having, it's an empty experience, not just emotionally, but from a pleasure standpoint, it's empty. Okay. And so then they go to the next guy. Whereas if that guy put it down, she would stick around with that guy for a while. I mean, we're designed to mate switch, so how long would remain to be seen for that circumstance, but it'd be much harder for her to leave if she's getting the orgasms that she's always dreamed of with that particular guy, right? Makes it a little bit more difficult for her to go away. And a lot of times when you see women obsessing over guys who are losers, who seem to have nothing going for them, or who are abusive or this, The reason they are obsessing over them is because that guy holds the key to her, her orgasms. That particular guy, that loser, that asshole, that whoever he is putting it down, and she feels she's getting her bonding neurochemical system stimulated through intense orgasms whenever she's with this guy. And so it becomes an addiction for her. And even if the guy's abusive or, is not good for her, she keeps going back to get laid by him. So this is the reality. Nobody wants to talk about this shit. I will talk about it, and I will get throttled by the algorithms. So you have to do me that favor and like and subscribe and share and do all those things, right? You got to do me that favor so that we get life-saving information out to people who need it. All right. So at any rate, I'm going to go to the thing. Let's see, where are we at? I'm going to share this real quick, just a quick ad break. All right. And then I'm going to get into the story. This woman writes about her sexually starved experience during her sexual prime, okay, with her boyfriend, and how she is absolutely starved and needing to get laid. And it's going to, thank you, sir. It definitely is clobbering time. Thank you, man. That's beautiful. All right. I think that's Ryan Stone. I don't know if that's Ryan. Ryan, is that your actual account? Are you, I don't know what the fuck's going on. Or are you a fake guy? I don't know. But Ryan Stone, ladies and gentlemen, either way, if it's the real Ryan Stone or the fake Ryan Stone, make sure you go to Ryan Stone's channel as well and watch his videos. They're pretty awesome. Okay. I thoroughly enjoy them. So, um, Laurent is spreading my videos like syphilis on a merchant's chip. I appreciate that. What is hope for a 5'9" guy? I don't know, man. I'm just going to tell you this. Go to my Instagram. Okay. I got a lot of posts of my shorts and stuff. But just scroll down and you're going to find pictures of me and my girlfriend. My girlfriend is very attractive. Okay. More attractive than me. And she's won awards for modeling. She's no longer in the industry. She is so she wants me to post pictures of us because her face has actually been in advertisements everywhere. So she wants me to post her because she has dread. She wants to make sure that I'm not presenting myself as a single guy because she knows I do get hit up by women in my DMs occasionally, right? And no, they're not all guys from the Ukraine or somewhere trying to, steal money and use someone's pictures. I have frequently gotten hit up, and that's just the nature of being on the internet. So at any rate, she wants to make sure I'm presenting myself as somebody who is in a relationship. So I say frequently, I mean, maybe once every month or two, we'll post a picture of me and my girlfriend. So I got the receipts there. You can go take a look. And the reason I'm telling you that is because I am not fucking 6 feet tall, bro. What is the hope for a 5'9" guy? You're looking at him right here. I mean, I wear like boots, which buys me an inch or two, depending on what boot I'm wearing sometimes. Okay. But I don't really give a fuck. I've never cared about height. Never. And it's never been a hindrance, even when it became popular to talk about. And it's funny. You go to like somewhere like, not that Miami is this great place, but it just happens so happens that I've mentioned it now a couple times. You go somewhere to Miami, or if you go in places like Latin America, there are drop dead gorgeous women with short guys because guys are not super tall in Latin America. It's not a big deal, so you have to get away from this internet bullshit, man, and get away from and who cares what women say? Really, who cares? A woman's checklist of needing a guy 6 feet tall, that's only there because she hasn't been seduced by properly by a man. Or isn't rather. She's not. I mean, this is an absence of male leadership, is what I'm saying. I'm not this attractive dude. I've had, I'm okay, right? But I'm more. I mean, I'm definitely not entering a modeling shoot anytime soon, right? I got muscles, I got dominance, there's things I got going for me. But like I'm not this like hot dude, you know what I mean? And you can go take a picture and see. I mean, my girlfriend's very attractive. And that's not the only girlfriend I've ever had in my life, bro. There's been a lot of them and they've been attractive too. And my point is like this is all about mindset and game, dude. You got to just, you know, you get away from the internet bullshit and listening to what dumb girls on the internet say and start just dating. You know what I'm saying? Like women don't give a shit if you're 5'9", if you are attractive and you know how to seduce her. If you don't know how to seduce the girl and you're not attractive because you don't know how to make yourself be attractive, right? Then yeah, now your height's a problem. But your height's just an excuse or this thing or that thing. They're all excuses to not date you because she didn't find you attractive, right? When you're attractive, it doesn't fucking matter, man. I can't stress that enough, dude. I can't. So thanks for posting that. Hopefully that's motivational. But like, it's never mattered. And even with girls, dude, if I had a nickel for every time some girl who was, said that she likes tall guys that ended up sleeping with me. Yep. Be a lot of nickels, my friend. So like just don't thank you. Hell yeah. Yeah. So don't let that bother you, man. Like don't let your height get in the way. All right. What is my mission? You should know by now, man, if you're on my channel. There you go. That's a good one. Bringing peace, freedom, and good sex to the world. Women are sexually frustrated. Why should men care? Well, it's information, bro. It's intelligence collection. By knowing that the girl that you're probably going on a date with is probably sexually frustrated, that's a good little piece of knowledge to have in your back pocket so that you can make some shit happen for yourself with her. You know what I'm saying? You can increase your own quality and frequency of sexual opportunities by knowing and being able to tell the signs of a woman who is not having or hasn't been having the sex that that would make her feel fulfilled and happy. So you can bring that to the table. It gives you intelligence, gives you something to work with, right? It's a tool. It's something that allows you to have the types of relationships you want. Okay, so that's the thing. I'm not so sure, Derek, that why don't you get into that in the community, bro? That seems like a crazy question. Hell yeah, dude. 5'10" and happy. Exactly. You know what? What if I don't want to get down the rabbit hole with height? It's over talked about anyway, but it's just like there are struggles for guys who are actually shorter, although I've had plenty of guys, 5'2", 5'3" guys be successful in dating. I've had plenty. Okay. Be successful, get a hot girl, whatever. There's plenty of shorter girls out there that are going to be just fine with you seducing them if you're a shorter guy. Even if they write on some, if they were to write that they want a guy who's 6 feet tall, if asked to make a checklist, that girl who's 5'1" will still hook up with a guy who's 5'5" and have that dude's babies and be very happy if the guy knows what he's doing. It's so that is what it is. All right. Um. Anyway, was I going to show my commercial? I think it was. All right. So let's do this real quick. All right. Because this is dropping soon. And this is going to help you through these issues and capitalize on the sexual marketplace and all these sex starved women that are out there. Psychopaths are evil, but they are successful. And not because they're evil, they're successful because they're effective. The average man is drowning in overthinking, fear, people pleasing, and hesitation, while the most ruthless personalities walk through life winning while you are struggling and you are losing. But here's the truth: you don't need to be a psychopath to win. You just need to learn the traits that they mastered and use them without being immoral or having poor ethics. Focus so sharp that it cuts through distraction. Charm that bends social dynamics. Resilience that makes you unshakable. Ruthlessness, but with empathy for others. The ability to say no without guilt. Fearlessness in the moments that matter. Mindfulness that kills anxiety, and action taking that separates leaders from followers. This isn't about becoming a terrible person. It's about becoming powerful. Someone who leads, someone women trust and desire. Someone who commands his world instead of just reacting to it. And that's why I created the Psychopath's Playbook, a complete system for the good men, the non-psychopathic men, but for men who want the results without becoming evil and without wasting years of trying to figure it out alone. This is an inner game course that will allow you to tap into that thing that you have been missing, that thing that's inside of you that will allow you to make more money, seduce women, and succeed. If you're ready to unlock the traits that make the world's most effective men untouchable, click the link and get into the community. When this course drops, you will get your exclusive announcement, and you'll be on the list before it fills up. And together, we'll make you unshakable, undeniable, and unstoppable. This is where your old self ends and your rise begins. I'll see you there. All right. So click that link and you can get in the community for free. And then you'll be able to have that opportunity when the course launches to join. Okay. And so quick anecdote, and then we'll get into the story. The reason why a lot of these psychopaths, narcissists, sociopaths tend to be better at sex is pretty simple. They don't have the aversions that you have to putting their self-esteem on the line, right? So the first thing is they're not ego protective. They're not as, I mean, there is a narcissistic injury in egos that they have, but they feel exceptional about themselves, or they just don't think about themselves at all and are focused on the goal. And so like you guys have these insecurities, these anxieties, you have this ego that you're trying to protect, and that prevents you from taking action to learning how to seduce, to getting better at sex, and to being able to really learn how to put it down in the bedroom. Is you have to, you have all these things that are going on inside of you and in your inner game that prevents you from facing the facts that without some sort of training and some knowledge, you're probably not, at the highest sexual potential that you could be. And there's a lot of sexual experiences that you're not, that you're lacking in delivering the women that you've been with. And so that's a tough pill for some guys to swallow. And so an average normal guy is protecting his ego. He's lying to themselves. Whereas a psychopath or a narcissist either lies to themselves in a positive way or just doesn't care. You know what I mean? It doesn't give a shit about their self-esteem in that sense. They don't need that, that validation. They lie to themselves to get validation. You know what I mean? They manipulate others to get validation. And so that's part of it. is they don't have that nervousness, that anxiety, and that self-protection, and that self-esteem protection that you have. Okay, so that's number one. But then what's the other part is the motivation to learn these skills, because to them, getting better at sex is part of their manipulation toolbox. And so a narcissist, for example, knows that he can entrap a woman into a narcissistic abuse relationship more readily and easily when he fucks her brains out and makes her, makes her eyes roll in the back of her head. And so, like, these guys know, like, it's a tool. If you're a psychopath and you can't bond with others, like if you're really on the spectrum and you can't bond with others in a healthy way, well, all you're left then is goals and the idea of winning and using people, right, to get whatever the win is that you're trying to win. Well, what better way to use women to get what you want, to include your own sexual pleasure, but then to really be able to get them attached to you through high sexual experiences. So toxic personalities know that sex is a tool to get women to do what you want. And so they don't have the ego, like fragile self-esteem that the average person has to get in the way of them pursuing knowledge in that area. So in their own ways, whether they might not, most of them aren't necessarily training with a professional or something, or learning, like they're not taking my course or joining my mastermind to figure out how to seduce better and be better in the bedroom. That's not really what they're doing, not most of them, but they are figuring it out. Their mindset is towards figuring it out, and they may not be the best lay on the planet, but they are certainly better than the average guy, who is usually not doing very well at all, especially these young dudes. Okay, and these younger generation that we're dealing with. And I'm going to get into a story about that and to illustrate my point. So that's why. And that's why a course like the one I'm having is helpful even in the bedroom, because it's going to remove all of those obstacles you have with your inner game that's preventing you from learning and experiencing a better sexual experience and delivering a better sexual experience with the women in your life. And once you're able to do that, you now have a superpower, because most of these dudes can't fuck. And that's the reality. So you just became higher value man in a sense, even if you didn't, the numbers on your checking account statement didn't change. You see what I mean? It's really it's really a low hanging fruit. It's actually kind of easy. In a sense, it's easier to learn how to put it down on some girl, right, than it is to learn how to make $1 million. Like, way easier. But guys will lie to themselves and ego protect themselves, some until the day that they die, so that they never learn anything about a woman's vagina. So they never figure it out. And then they can't, they just don't understand that if you want to get what you want out of your relationships, you have to offer something that makes the girl want to be there, And if you're not offering orgasms and an emotional experience, right? What else are you offering? Your money, right? Your labor. So if you want to be a slave, or if you want to pay for pussy, that's one way to go. And that's, most guys go the slave route. You know what I mean? I mean, most guys who make a bunch of money after not really, working on their game and stuff, they just end up paying for pussy. It may not be an actual prostitute. It may look like a wife, but she's there because of his success. She's not there because he made her eyes roll in the back of her head. So it's transactional relationship. Have fun. Okay. Have fun in your divorce. have fun feeling like shit for the majority of your relationship as your wife or girlfriend thinks about some other dude's dick, thinks about the guy at work or some hot dude at her gym that she gets to get, that she would like to experience because she's not that into you. Okay, so have fun. That's what most guys are doing. They're having a lot of fun. All right. So if that's what you want to do. But what I actually recommend though is that you get your inner game together so that you can pursue excellence in certain areas of your life. That includes seduction. Being good in the bedroom has more to do with what you're doing outside of the bedroom. It's the psychological framework and the seduction and the emotions you're creating before your penis goes anywhere near her. All right. And that's the reality of it. I'm not saying that sexual technique and some of those things aren't valuable. There are people with courses on that are very valuable courses. You can get those. I'll plug Sterling Cooper, a friend of mine. He's got courses, books. He's got some books that are not too expensive for you to just pick up and work on your sexual skill. That the mechanics of sex is the easy part. The seduction is the part, the getting the emotional, experience for the girl where she is high arousal by the time you end up in the bedroom. That's where the skill is. Okay. And so at any rate, let's get into the story and then I'll read some more of the comments. All right. So this starts off with the woman writes, she's 24-year-old woman. She writes, my boyfriend, who's a 22-year-old male, is too scared to have sex with me, and it's kind of ruining my life. So 22-year-old guy scared to fuck. All right, that sounds interesting, right? This is going to contain too much information, so be warned. Sorry, I'm desperate here. So my boyfriend and I have been together for 3 years. We have done the deed a decent amount of times with no problems until last year. Watch how she tells this story too, and think about what you know about women. And if you don't know anything about women, another reason to join the community and also watch Ryan Stone's channel because he stopped by to say hello and his channel is very good. But yeah, just watch how she explains this, right? So my boyfriend started to have more frequent performance issues where he either couldn't orgasm or couldn't get it up to full hardness for very long. He has some trauma related to being introduced and addicted to porn at a very young age that I won't get into detail about, but it led him to turning off the part of his brain that objectifies women. His words. All right, I'm going to stop there for a second. The part of the brain that objectifies women, he, because of it is his traumatic introduction to porn, and his addiction that he started at a young age. He can't objectify women. He has to turn that off. And now that means that he can't perform sexually and he can't get a hard on. All of that there is bullshit. Okay. That's an excuse that the boyfriend is giving. Okay. What traumatic, what maybe he was potentially assaulted as a child and forced to watch porn. I doubt it. I'm not saying assault doesn't happen, but that's not what she said. So I don't think that's what happened because she's not listing the guy's name or her name. So there's no reason to not say, well, he was assaulted when he was younger, right? So he wasn't assaulted. We can assume that because she would have written that. He is playing the victim, though, about his pornography use. And to some degree, I understand. What does a 9-year-old know, 10-year-old know when he's logging into the internet and, watching Pornhub and getting curious and starts to go down the pornography rabbit hole at a young age. In a sense, do you know what I mean? That kid doesn't have agency and nobody's watching him. So in a sense, yeah, that's not necessarily 100% like his fault, but there is no accountability the man is taking here, right? The guy in the relationship. You can use that as the excuse when you're 9 as to some trauma you experienced, but when you're a 22-year-old adult man, okay, or at any age as an adult man, you don't get to use as an excuse anymore, right? But that's what he's doing. So, like, what really happened was this dude got into porn young. Nobody did that but himself. He did. He may have been too young to have agency, and his parents weren't watching him. So mistakes were made for sure by the adults in his life. Okay, but that being said, though, nobody did it but him. Okay, and nobody's doing it but him, and he's addicted to porn, and he can't get an erection around a real woman. All right, that's what's going on here, and she is ego protecting, saying, well, we did the deed plenty of times. A woman doesn't say we did the deed plenty of times and we ran into problems last year. That's not how she words it if she's getting her brains fucked out. Okay, or even just having average normal frequent sex. That's not how she words it. She would word it and say something like, we had a pretty healthy sex life until last year. Or we were having sex a few times a week and everything was fine until last year. And they started having erectile issues. See, that would tell me that something happened, and it's not just the porn addiction. It would be something else to cause the erectile dysfunction. Could be related to the low testosterone that these young guys have also, which is connected to the porn use and some of these other things. So that would be what I would conclude if they were having a normal, healthy sex life, what I would consider a normal, healthy sex life, which several times a week, not just once a week. Okay. Doesn't have to be every day, although that's nice when it is. But, if you're a few times a week, 3 times a week is good, 4. When you're really busy, only 2. But if you're having sex more than once a week, okay, and it's pretty satisfying and everybody's happy, then that's one thing and that's good. But that's not what she's describing, is she? Got to read between the lines when women talk. And this is something to remember, okay? Women are full of shit when they talk about the sexual background and experience that they're having, because there's a level of embarrassment that they have if they're not having good sex. So all this great sex that women will say that they're out there having, many of these women are just lying. They don't actually know any better because they've never experienced good sex in their life. I've talked to and even had girls in my past that didn't have an orgasm, but used to talk about their ex like they're having this great sex life. Well, but I never orgasmed though. I had to do it by myself with a vibrator later. Like, they'll tell you details and you're like, was it really a good sex life then? Not by my definition, but you see what I mean? It's women are protecting their own egos as well. Okay, because their self-esteem is rolled up into being able to have good sex from a guy who can deliver it. So if they're with some boyfriend who's not, they're probably going to lie about it. Okay. So anyways, the dude is full of shit, and so is she. Let's continue. He also had a testicular torsion at a young age, so he's insecure about his body image. So the guy is riddled with anxiety and insecurity and addicted to porn. Surprise, surprise. Okay. He grew up in front of a screen. He's 22 years old, so that's where he grew up. On top of this, he has become incredibly insecure about his performance after multiple times of him not getting it up. I lost my spot. Where are we? Not getting up and not being able to finish. This guy is over consuming porn, jerking off, and then when he goes to fuck his girlfriend, he can't get it up, and then he gets all weird about it because he's got low testosterone. Do you see the pattern? It also led to me having major insecurity. It led to me having major insecurities, but he reassured me multiple times he thinks I'm incredibly attractive and he wants to be with me sexually. He also has a therapist and has been talking about his struggles with with the therapist. But now we're coming up on on 6 months of no sex. 6 months. 6 months of no sex. This woman wouldn't know what a good dick down would be like. Has never experienced. She wouldn't know how to describe that. This woman is practically a virgin when it comes to actually having good sex. She has no idea. They haven't had sex in 6 months. A handful of times he's been doing stuff for me, but we just have not had penetrative sex in 6 months. Oh, I found out that there's like these acronyms and terms now for non-penetrative sex and penetrative sex because these younger dudes are so are so terrible at sex and porn brain that they actually had to differentiate the two things. Like to me, it's just common sense. If you're like, well, we're having sex, then that means you're having penetrative sex. And then around the penetrative sex is like the oral and the other stuff, right? In playing, foreplay and all the things that go into it. That's how it always has been since I've been around in the planet Earth, right? Is that sex is sex. And if you're not having penetrative sex, then it's really not sex, it's other stuff. Well, got a blowjob, got oral, we just made out, right? Or whatever. There's a clarification that you have if it's not penetrative sex. Otherwise, sex means, the guy goes in the girl, right? Like this is like birds and the bees shit, health class, somewhere between 6th and 8th grade or whatever, right? This is pretty common sense. Not to these fucking young dudes now and the women that they're with, not to this younger generation. Okay, because to them, there's so much erectile dysfunction that they had to come up with a term to mean sex, but that wasn't, and I don't even remember the term. Maybe somebody can help me out in the chat. They had to come up with a term to that, like a little acronym that meant like sex, but no penetration sex. And then another one to define that, oh, there was penetration this time. Like, that's fucking crazy. That's how bad it is, dude. That's how bad it is for these girls who are not getting like laid in the right way with their high notches, but they're not getting like fucked the right way. And all these dudes who aren't able to do it because they're just like porn brain. Like the percentages are high enough for this to even be a thing. This is not just a small little niche. This is like this normal conversation for young people. This is like a normal story what I'm reading now. Okay. So they played around, couldn't have penetrative sex though, because he can't get a boner because he's watching, but he's still watching porn and jerking off. You see what's going on here? It got to the point where I was so depressed about it, I had a breakdown, as he did after seeing me cry. So we got a guy who cannot be a man, right? Like he just can't do it. He didn't grow up with any male role models, any male, nothing. I mean, he's the same fucking asshole who's probably writing negative comments on my Twitter or whatever with an anon account and a fake bullshit account. Like this is the young dudes who are so broken. That's how fucked we are. Okay, just FYI. And there's plenty of old dudes too who escaped in their own ways to stuff, and they're just as fucked up. Anyway, we'll continue going. So he told me he's just too insecure now that he needs me to be, and now he needs me to be assertive with sex. So he just informs this woman has been with this dude for 3 years. This 24-year-old woman who's in her sexual prime. Now, maybe she's obese and maybe she's unattractive. I don't know what she looks like, but there's plenty of halfway decent looking girls or girls with potential who are in these situations. And they just don't know any better because they've never been fucked properly. This is to them, this is like what was normal to them, which sounds crazy. Like sometimes I get shit, things will come my way. People will bring me questions or problems. And I am like, what the fuck, dude? You know what I mean? Like I'm just like, get in the DMs, right? Like, bro, what are you fucking doing with your life right now? Like, this is so fucked. Some of these stories, like that's so out there that it's just like, how? But it's what's happening right now. You know what I mean? There's just guys, there are just so many guys that are just starving for having a connection with a woman. It's just crazy. So many women who are starving for a dude who can just get an erection and make her come. Like, what in the hell is going on? And it's all these younger, so-called attractive people, which is, by the way, why, and they don't have stats on it because academia won't do the research yet. It's too controversial. Someone won't get sponsored for their research. Women today are going for older men more often. That's a thing. Yeah, my girlfriend's 20 years younger than me. It's just the way it is. And it's the story that's been as old as I've been dating and growing older every single year, which is that these guys my age can't fucking put it down, or they are so unattractive that I don't even want to let them try because they lack dominance, they lack security, they lack a masculine frame, they lack masculine behaviors. They're just not attracted. So many hot girls in their 20s are not attracted to guys their own age because of this kind of shit and how they act. So what do? They go for somebody from a different generation who didn't grow up watching, frying their brain with pornography and screens. They find a guy with healthy testosterone. That's another thing. Testosterone has gone down for every age group. But what that means is like, okay, if you had 100 guys for a girl to choose from and 20, 30 years ago, let's say 70 of them had attractive masculine qualities and 70 out of 100 had attractive masculine qualities and had healthy testosterone, right? That means out of 100 guys, she's going to not pick 30 of them because they don't have healthy hormone markers and they can't demonstrate masculine behavior. And so then they got, she's got all these guys to choose from. That girl then isn't going to necessarily date a guy who's 20, 30 years younger than her because she's got guys in her own age group that she can choose from. You know what I mean? That have healthy testosterone and have masculine behavior. Well, that was 30 years ago, right? Now that girl looks at 100 guys, maybe 25 of them have health, maybe 25 to 30 of them have healthy testosterone and have some masculine behaviors. So it's like way less dudes in their age category. And then out of the 25 or 30, they're either totally womanizing, right, and capitalizing on their situation, which means that's dangerous for her, okay? Or she gets a notch with that guy, but then that's it, right? Or they just have other unattractive behaviors. So, because they're not, even though they have healthy testosterone and they're masculine, they don't have good social behaviors because they grew up in front of screens. So what's a girl who's 22, 23, 24 going to do today in 2026? She's going to date a guy who's 10 years older, 15, 20 years older. Not that guys in their, let's say 40s or something, guys in their 40s, statistically have lower testosterone as well. But you're dealing when you have such a small pool of dateable guys in your age category with healthy testosterone and attractive behaviors, you're going to seek out, if you're a woman who's attractive and in her 20s, you're going to use that attractiveness to seek out an older man with resources, healthy, more testosterone than the guys her own age, and healthy behaviors. You know what I mean? You're going to seek outside of your assortative mating cohort of guys in your age category. You're going to go outside of your age category now. And that's what a lot of women are doing. So if you're an older guy and you want to date attractive women, like, you have every opportunity now. Like, it's more and more women are doing this. And they're not announcing it. They're not making a big announcement. They're not running to the internet and saying and defending it or anything. They're just doing it. They're quietly checking out from these guys in their age category and group that have low levels of masculinity, and they're seeking out more attractive options. And many of those options are older than they are. That's what's happening. Well, if you're a guy who's in his 30s, for example, or 40s and just went through a divorce, or, you've been having a dry spell, you're not capitalizing on this. You're missing out. It's like buying a house after the housing crash. I mean, you're really missing a lot of opportunities to maximize your ability to find really good options for short-term dating as well as long-term relationships right now. Because if you can show up, you take care of yourself and are more physically active, and you take care of your body so your testosterone levels are healthy, you learn seduction skills, you learn the stuff that we talk about here, like, man, you have ample opportunity right now. Okay. So I'll continue. She writes, the guy had asked for her to be the one to be the sex initiator, which is very bitch-like of him. So then she writes, so I've been trying to initiate more, and he backs away after a bit and says he gets scared and apologizes to me. What? What are you doing? Now that the girl is initiating sex, he's so porn-brained, he freaks out. Yeah, and he can't get a little boner for her. This is very sad. And I mean that non-sarcastically. This is fucked up. So she says, I've been trying, he has said he goes in with the intention, but the fear of disappointing me is making him back out. But at this point, I'm just lost on what I can do about it. So this is the problem with pornography. Now, look, pornography used to not be that big of a problem. And here's why. All right, use military dudes as an example, right? Like, let's say you go on a deployment. You don't have access to women. The few women that are on a deployment are not hot. And they're all getting laid by several men because they have this, for women, deployments for women, for some of these girls, it's like a fucking free-for-all orgy. You know what I mean? They just sit there and just like execute open hypergamy, out in the bases, right? And so that's not good for most guys. Like, you can get in trouble with your career and stuff. So what do guys do? They got a 9-month deployment. Maybe they got a wife at home and they don't want to cheat on her. They get a little pornography. They get a thumb drive, or, they get some shit that somebody's written. They pass around porn back, whatever. And then what's the extent of their pornography use as a soldier on a deployment? They sneak off. I mean, you don't have any fucking privacy a lot of times, right? So they got to sneak off. They're in a porta-john. It's 120 degrees out. Maybe it's at night, it's a little cooler, but not that much. They got about 5 minutes to crank one off before they got to go back to whatever is going on while they're deployed in a combat zone. So that's how that worked. If pornography was used like that, like a little bit of a crank off material so you can just go back to work because right in the environment you're in, you don't have access to women. This wouldn't be the most unhealthy thing on the planet. This wouldn't be a big deal. Okay. All these guys, for the most part, which is most guys, who would crank one off to porn on a deployment, as soon as they got back, they were hooking up with real women. They were on a conquest to do that. Whether they were running home to their wives to give her the sex she missed for 9 months, and hopefully she did miss it and didn't screw his neighbor or his friend while he was gone. But he delivers the fucking goods. Guys are going out, trying to hook up, get with a girl somewhere, meet a new girl. They're approaching guys who've never had. There's no such thing. They didn't do necessarily pickup courses. Most guys had no idea what a pickup course was, but they just didn't have the fear, and they would go talk to women. Porn didn't really ruin anything for them. It was just a tool for them to use when they didn't have sexual access during a period of their lives. Not a big deal. How about back in the day, like when I was a kid? When I was a kid, I didn't log on to the internet and just bombard my brain with the craziest pornography imaginable, you know what I mean, for several hours a day as a 9-year-old. Like that, this is not what you did back in my time in the 90s, pre-internet. Like the internet was sort of invented, but not mainstream. So you'd catch a sex scene that was kind of vanilla in some HBO or Showtime movie, right? Or you would like get that old Victoria's Secret catalog, when you're into a pre-teenager, 11, 12 years old, look at some boobies, look at some ass, woo, right? And then go back to your life. It wasn't changing the neurology of your brain. When you're like a 9, 10, 11-year-old and you're logging onto the internet and soaking in hours of pornography, hell, if you're an adult doing it, you start to change your brain in your sexual responses. When you're a kid doing it, times that by 10, because your brain is still developing. So now your brain develops around the understanding of sex and how to achieve reproductive success as something that's done through a screen. And these guys are training the brain to respond to a screen rather than a real person. And what's worse is they've removed the aspect of tension. So in other words, it's easy dopamine hits. Easy, log on and jerk off to some porn, right? It's an easy dopamine hit for these guys. Whereas real sex always involves an element of tension. We could call it some anxiety, right? Well, if there's any element, because these guys are so weak now, if there's any element of tension at all, the brain responds into fight or flight mode, sucks all the blood from the limbs to protect the main organs, and now the dick can't get hard. That's what's happening. Any little bit of tension, or it creates an anxious response in a guy who hasn't had to get sexual access by getting off the fucking internet and talking to women and trying to make things happen for himself. By being starved like older guys like me were when we were younger. We did not have access to just free sex anywhere we went. So that lack of access caused us to have to learn how to interact with the opposite sex. And then you would try it and then you would fuck up, right? And you were unattractive. You get laughed at by her and her friends. This is very common experience for a lot of guys, unless you were like the super Chad, which I was not. So I was the guy who definitely would crush on a girl and try some shit and have it blow up in my face. But that's a learning experience though. And you learn how to process through stress, tension, anxiety, failure, rejection, all those things. These younger guys, and even some of you guys who are older even, are so distanced from that actual feedback of rejection, potential embarrassment, tension, nervousness, any of the things that would be a physiological response to everything that happens during the buildup of sex. So they can't perform. They're either coming too soon or they can't come at all, right? Or they fucking can't, they can't keep their dick hard. It's a mess. It's an absolute fucking mess. And then they're just sitting there. Now they're like, well, trying to get erectile dysfunction medication, getting, Viagra when you're in your early 20s, kids in their early 20s getting on testosterone replacement. It's ridiculous now. And so no wonder why these dudes don't want to fuck those guys. No wonder why they're checking out. Or they get a boyfriend like this. This girl has been an incel because she hasn't had sex in 6 months with a boyfriend at home who she can't get to fuck her. And she's in her sexual prime. You know what I mean? She should be maybe thinking about children someday. And she can't even get this dude to like perform, right? So to conclude this story, I know I'm not unattractive. I know it's not a problem with what I'm doing, but I don't know how to help him get out of this mindset. How can I help him to get over this fear? Is it possible for me at all? What should I do? I'm just lost. So this woman, this young lady is describing the struggles of many women today. So many women, whether they're having one night stands and casual sex, whether they've checked out completely, are just having the worst sexual experiences. This sounds crazy. Like, what's crazy about this story isn't that the dude is like not performing sexually and like such a bitch about it. But what's crazy is of how normalized it is for her. She's just like, this is what's happening. Been with this guy 3 years and the sex was all right before. And, the sex was good before. And now, whatever. She didn't even say good. She's like, we did the deed a few times. You've been together 3 years. You've done the deed a few times. That's what you write. But then that stopped a year ago. And then we haven't had any penetration at all in 6 months. Like, that is what? That's fucking nuts. But what's nuts about it is this girl is like, what do I do? Because this is not an uncommon situation. Girls are in this situation to various different degrees. And they're not happy with their sex lives. And they are getting more out of a vibrator than they are a warm body. And that's why they don't give a shit. And so when you go take them on a date and they're just like, and boring, and you get in to talk to you is like pulling teeth out of your face. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, right? The reason they're like that is because it's a defense mechanism, because they know that they crave something, they want it, but they don't know how to get it. And they've been disappointed so many times in all different ways, but particularly when a guy actually gets to be inside her, it's a disappointment. And so she goes on that date, even if she's a young girl, 24-year-old girl or something on a date, she's boring and she's bored because she's abused her brain with her social media and her phone. And now she has to put it away, pay attention to a guy who in her brain, in her subconscious mind, is most likely going to just deliver shitty sex. And she's going to have to use her vibrator, and that's going to be it. And so where's her motivation? She's not motivated. That's why these girls aren't motivated, guys. All right? I mean, there's lots of reasons, and it's not all men's fault or anything. But it's not about blaming anybody, really. It's just, this is the experience that they've had and they've been having. And so then by the time they get on a date with you, even whether they've had a lot of notches or not very many, it's like, I've been on so many of these and had them not work out. And I've had sex with dudes and it was gross. And here we are. Thanks for the cup of coffee. You know what? I don't even want to do coffee dates anymore. This is fucking stupid. You better buy me dinner first, guy. You know what I mean? That's what you're getting now because you're just so tired. How do you break through all that? Through seduction. That's how. By seducing them. By learning how to spark those emotions with your skills. Okay, that's how. Right? So that date feels different than the other dates. You know, she's not just in this boring interview situation with a guy just so she can feel like a human being, but really she's not excited. Instead, it's like, wow, this guy frustrates me a little bit, or he makes me laugh, or you know, he's interested. He's a good listener. He's actually interested in me. He told a really cool story. I'm kind of curious now to learn more about him. All of a sudden, her boredom is no longer boredom. She's interested. There's a curiosity. It's like, wow, what is this? Okay. That's seduction skills that do that. That's having good seduction skills with women. That's how you bring all that stuff out. And by the end of the date, she's like, man, I really had a good time. I can't remember when I connected with somebody like that. I hope we go on a second date. I mean, this is what is in store for you with very beautiful women if you just learn the fucking skills and stop worrying about how tall you are. Okay? Just take what you got, make yourself look good. That's that anxiety, dude, and that fucking like self-esteem. That psychopaths don't care about their self-esteem. They're just like, what do I got? What are my weapons at my disposal? I'm going to capitalize on it so I can win. You know, if some psychopath wants to control some woman and, you know what I mean, in an abusive or nefarious way, he just goes, what are my tools in my toolbox? What skills can I develop? Now I'm going to go execute and win this. That's all he's doing. He's not worried about like his little self-esteem. He's not, you know, frustrated because this girl didn't pay attention to me enough. She didn't text me the right way. I'm upset. You see what I mean? So I got some research to go through. Let me look at. Let's read some stuff. I'm going to read some comments. Sterling stuff. Sterling is such a great human being. I can't promote and plug him enough. He's awesome. So just wanted to share. I'm going to have later this year. The plan is to have a sexual psychology course where we talk about sex and getting laid, and some mechanics and stuff like that will be covered. So I will have a sex course sometime. If you're a mastermind or elite member in my community, you'll get all that stuff. But Sterling stuff is very, very good, in my opinion. Okay. So going through questions. All right. Okay, let me read this one. I haven't read it yet, so I'm reading it for the first time. I'm 5'8", never had an issue. Also 200 pounds and 11 to 13% body fat, depending on the DEXA scan I get every 6 months. Pulled out the DEXA scan, my friend. All right, well, good job. Maybe you're not, most people don't have any clue what they're talking about when they give their body fat percentage. You clearly do. All right, good for you, man. That means you're in shape. Yeah, because of a tatted up bodybuilder, no problems in dating. Get fit as fuck and chicks will look. Yep, you got it, man. This is what I mean. Ed Hogg at Ed Hogg. Ed here is winning, or at least figuring out how to win. He's not caught up in the fact that he's 5'8". 5'8" is what he has. So you're going to make yourself look the best you can with what you got. That's the end of it. That's it. Right? And so what could he control? What could Ed control? Ed could control the way his body looks, his fitness level, his physique, because body fat levels capitalized on that. Women are, trust me, I understand from her firsthand experience, especially when I was a little bit leaner, not that much leaner though. Women actually don't care if you're stage ready, but 11 to 13% body fat's perfect. You know what I mean? Like that's a perfect physique, so like by girl standards, like this is what a guy should look like. 5'8" won't matter, especially if the girl is, 5'2", 5'3". But like in my case, my girl is my height. My girl is like 5'9", dude. She's like my height. Sometimes she's taller than me when she's depending on the shoes we're wearing. Never was an issue. Never became a problem. You know what I mean? And this is the experience. So, Ed, what you're describing is what I want more men to experience. And for you young guys that are struggling, okay, and can't get a woman to save your lives, you're in your early 20s, read what Ed's saying here. Past tall guys to come to me in the bar, the gym, the mall, etc. I'm 36. I'm swamped with attention more than when I was 26. That is correct. When you're in your mid 30s, you're in your prime. Physically speaking, and you usually have more experience, and you're further along in life. Question: how to give a great sexual experience with an STD? Well, what STD do you have? The Great Depression. Let me tell you, T Diamond, it was not depressing at all. It was pretty good. It's pretty good not being internet brained. I'm glad I dodged this fucking bullet that these younger guys are into, man. I tell you. Yeah, so just be 10 feet tall. There you go. I don't know what STD you mean. Oh, HV2. So the big old heart. Dude, like some like 1/5 to 1/4 of people have HV2. I think it's a little bit overblown, quite honestly. You take medication, you control your outbreaks, and then you just fucking have good sex with people. What's the problem? I think it's more of a mental. I've had clients, come through who've had that, had the same problems, same questions, same worries. Reality is a lot of people actually have it. A lot of people have one or two. So all you have to do is control it so that you don't cause an outbreak for someone else. There's a way from a game perspective how to present things in a way that it's not going to get you stopped up. And you can do just fine. You really can. And what's wrong? You can deliver a great sexual experience. There's nothing wrong with your delivery of a good sexual experience unless you're in the middle of an outbreak, which case then obviously you're going to wait a few days, maybe a couple weeks to be safe, whatever. But, medication, my understanding is the medication works pretty well and that stuff goes away like pretty quick and it's not a big deal. So I think that, that's more of an inner game thing than anything else. And just learning, I think it's really just learning how to navigate around it. And that's been my experience with other clients who've had some of those same struggles. Okay, so if you like this, the way I lined it out in the comment, not comment section, in the video description, I lined out some research, okay, for you guys to take a look at. So let me know after looking at that, it can be later on in comments or whatever, whether or not you like the way that I laid this out. I classically don't put all the research out there when I do a video that has, there's research to back up pretty much most of what I say. And if there isn't, I usually just say that. I have a caveat. There is research and data to back up the things that I do say in my videos. my thing is that most people really don't read it and really don't know how to read it. So it's just like taking the trouble to find the links and to put the stuff up there and put that effort in hasn't been something I've done because there's been very low return on that investment. People aren't going to click on my YouTube video more because I have research or I don't have research in the comments, right? Or in the video descript. But if you guys do like it, and if you guys really like having those works cited, value it, would actually take a look or whatever, let me know. Because if enough people let me know, I will do that more often. But going down the list of research, one of the, I'll kind of go in order from resources and research. Okay. So there's studies out there to show that hookup culture, okay, in the state of singles in America by some reputable sources found that there's a trend rising in what's called heteropessimism. It's a term used to describe young women's frustration with the quality of modern heterosexual dating. A 2024 analysis highlights that over 80% of undergraduate students, so college girls, report negative emotional outcomes post hookup, to include regret and diminished self-esteem. So they're not happy. The ones that are out fucking aren't real happy with their results. Okay, that's the first piece of research you'll find in the video descript. The next one, the global decline in testosterone. All right, so the population level decline in serum testosterone levels in American men. This is Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism. All right, the key finding is in this landmark longitudinal study found that testosterone levels in men have been dropping approximately 1.2% since the late 80s. Okay, so like since the late 80s, T levels have been dropping significantly. This is could be due to environmental toxins, some of it, but I think a lot of it, I think that's a minor thing because it correlates, the drop in testosterone levels correlates with the rise in levels of obesity and sedentary behaviors. So sedentary behaviors, not going outside, being in front of screens, and being too fat, testosterone levels have plummeted. Whereas 20-year-old men now have the testosterone levels of 60-year-old men back in the back in like 2005. 20 years ago is like, I covered this in another video, but like 20 years ago, a 60, a 20, how am I trying to say it? All right. 20 years ago. All right. I can't fucking, it's been a long day already, but you know what I'm saying. All right. So like today, what I'm trying to say today is someone in their 20s, early to mid 20s. Okay. 20 to 25 years old has the testosterone level, the average testosterone level of that age in the United States has the same levels of testosterone of a 6-year-old man 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, the average 20 something year old had way healthier, way more testosterone. Today, on average, they don't. So what that means is there's some on one side of the graph that have good, healthy testosterone in their 20s. They're fewer and far between. And then there's a bunch who have very low testosterone and a bunch in the middle. And then the net result is, and you can just tell by looking at photos. Look at photos from people who graduated like in the late 90s and how masculine they look compared to people graduating like last year, 2025. It's pretty crazy. So testosterone levels plummeted. And that's why you see a lot of these things, a lot of these behaviors. All right. So Pornography and brain plasticity. So I include a study on the brain structure and connectivity associated with pornography consumption. All right. The key finding is the study found a negative correlation between pornography hours per week and the volume of gray matter in the right stratum, the part of the brain that is responsible for processing reward. It suggests that the brain downregulates its dopamine receptors to protect itself from what's called supranormal stimuli, leading to a decreased sensitivity to real world sexual partners. So it's an overstimulation of the sexual areas of the brain with too much porn consumption that leads to a difficulty in stimulating the brain sexual with a sexual partner. So with a real person, they can't get their dicks hard. That's what's happening because the brain is down regulating those responses to compensate for the overconsumption of watching a screen and jerking off. Okay. So there's that data. So the shit I'm telling you isn't coming out my asshole. All right. There's a lot of data to back up everything I'm telling you. When I'm telling you men are fucking weaker and addicted to porn and chicks are not having good sex, I have data. I'm not just making this up. I'm not just making a social commentary because of what I've seen. There's actual research that proves and backs up what I'm saying. Okay. The rising sexlessness among young women, another data point. Okay. The data, according to the General Social Survey, and then an analysis of that data, the share of young women 18 to 29 who reported having no sex in the past year rose by 50% from 2010 to 2024. 50%. So I've said this before, the fifth wave of feminism is mass loneliness. It's a loneliness epidemic among men and women and a replacement of men through technology. That is the fifth wave of feminism. That's what we're in right now. Just nobody's talking about it. Okay. So, like, we're in the fifth wave right now. Women, there are 50% more women in 2024 when the research was compiled, right? Than 2010. 50% more women who've become incels, are sexless, who haven't had sex or sexual relationships in the past year or longer. This is during their sexual prime. This is not a sexless marriage. They could be out dating and getting boyfriends and having sexual relationships, getting engaged, getting married, having honeymoons, all kinds of things where sex should be involved. Women are checking out of the sexual marketplace, and they're doing it because of what I'm saying. They're not getting fucked right. There is no buy-in to do it. Their dopamine areas of their brain are being absorbed by their phone instead of being absorbed by their access to a guy who can dick her down properly. Like, seriously, there is no reward for them. They don't feel the sense of reward to go out and find a guy to fuck them right because they haven't been fucked right, probably. Do I have any data to back that up? Well, why, yes, I do. Okay. The high prevalence of sexual dissatisfaction or pleasure gap. The study is a systematic review published in PMC regarding and I have the link, okay, down there. Regarding the reproductive age women found that the prevalence of female sexual dysfunction, which includes lack of desire, arousal issues, lack of sexual satisfaction, is remarkably high in modern samples. The key finding is that some study groups of young women dissatisfaction rates were reported as high as 86%. I've made this claim before and people think I'm full of shit. I'm not. The fucking data is right here. In some of these samples of hundreds of women, 86% of them reported dissatisfaction with the sex they're having or no sex at all. So women aren't motivated to want to do shit for men when they can't get dicked down by a man properly. Why would they? It kind of makes sense to me, but we're not talking about this. So additionally, meta-analysis shows that nearly 48% of women in their reproductive years experience some form of sexual distress or dysfunction. Half of women during their reproductive years, so in their 20s, are reporting sexual distress or sexual dysfunction. And in some of these samples, as high as 86% of women are not happy with their sex lives, or they don't have sex lives at all. Do you understand the implication here? What do you think it means now if you learn how to seduce? What do you think it means if you can? The hard part isn't the sex. The hard part is getting through all the bullshit that they have going on in their brains from having such terrible experiences, both their fault for having terrible experiences, for choosing the wrong guys and choosing the things that, things they shouldn't be doing, and being absorbed by their phone so that they can't pay attention to a guy, right? Like, it's their fault, women, but it's also the guys that she does let in to her life aren't delivering. So like, the hard part is getting through the initial bullshit in the dating market to get that emotional buy-in of wanting to see you regularly. But once you do that and you get that second or third date and you're good at seducing, and she's having all kinds of feelings that she really hasn't had, that she's always wanted, and then you end up in that bedroom, that fucking arousal is going to be so high she's not going to know what to do with it. I don't think you guys understand, really. Hopefully you do after this video, but most guys do not understand. Right now is an opportunity more than ever to have really good experiences with women, and you guys can't figure out how to break through in the dating market. Continue. Performance anxiety and inhibition in young men. So research from 24-25 study in behavioral sciences found that young women with lower sexual satisfaction often suffer from sexual inhibition due to the threat of performance failure. The connection, this suggests that women are not just bored, although they are bored, but that's not the only thing. But they're actually experiencing psychological shutdowns because they feel their own pleasure and the guys or their sexual partner's ability to provide that pleasure is a source of stress rather than connection. And that's Psych Post, research on performance, fears, and satisfaction. So I included that study as well. So there's 6 things to look at. There's a lot of data here. Women, here's the conclusion, guys. The story I read, the data I'm providing. Well, before the conclusion, let me take a peek. All right. Okay, I'm going to tell you. All right, so divorcing at 62, 5'8", you drop some weight. Hey, man, good job, by the way, getting yourself in better shape. Okay, that's awesome. All right, feel good about that. Plan on getting back into the dating world. Can dance, salsa, swing, sounds fucking great. You have nothing but really good realistic options. And in fact, we were just talking about this at a mastermind call for a guy who's doing, some dance stuff. A lot of guys use the dance thing nowadays. It's a great way to meet women. I'm going to defer this because I need to end this stream though. So I'm going to defer you to my community. So why don't you join that and write a post, okay? And you're going to get a lot of responses to include from me on how you can get started and reasonably source women. If you're a decent enough looking guy and the bar is not that high, it really isn't. I mean, look at me, right? Like, anyone wonders if they can get a woman, they can just look at me and be like, he can do it. Anybody can. So, the bar is not super high, really isn't. And you can have great experiences with women. Your best laid decisions, though, put you in a divorce at 62. That means that you're lacking good experiences with women right now, and you're lacking probably areas in your mental framework in order to create that. No offense or anything, but that's just probably that's the likely scenario. You're not going to come out of a divorce, come out of a marriage. I don't know the length of how long you were married and the details, but you're not coming out of a marriage, coming out of a divorce at 62 without, having some skill gaps. You know what I'm saying? So that's good, though, that you're asking the question, because that means you're willing to approach and learn where your skill gaps are so you can start having good relationships. And I'm not saying good just in terms of like good dates or being able to pick up on women. That's important, but it's the rest of it. You don't want to find yourself in another marriage or another long-term relationship that you don't call a marriage because you're not going to get married again or something of that nature, which is fine. That's what a lot of guys will say. But then they find themselves with some girlfriend that is fucking destroying their life. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, we got to make sure you start dating in a fucking really productive way. And you also are able to develop those frame skills. So later on, you don't end up in a bad circumstance, but you have plenty of time. I mean, I'm not saying, it's not optimal, right? Obviously, it would have been nice to do this when you were younger or whatever, but like, so what? You're 62, you're fine. Okay. There's plenty of guys who have met like the best chick they've ever been with in their 60s and even 70s. I've had a couple. And if they're going to live what's the best way to live out the last 10, 20, 50 years of your life? Who knows how long you're going to live, right? But, a 70-year-old guy, let's say the 70-year-old guy meets a girl of his dreams, but way late in life and makes it work because he has the skills to make it work. And he has a great 10 years with her as an older man but dies at 80. Wasn't that good news? Like, he was able to have a great 10 years with somebody, and not many people can say that. You know what I mean? Most people do not have a great more than 1 year with a sexual partner. They get stuck in shitty marriages and they stay there, or they bounce from relationship to relationship. That's the higher percentage of people end up in that scenario. And so if you can find an amazing chick, and first of all, have amazing experiences with women in general that you've never been able to have before. Maybe, I don't know your background. And then, you want to do a relationship again. You do it on your terms, and it's with somebody that's real, that you can really have a better relationship with because you have better skills. Like, you're going to live out some of the most important times of your life, which is as your life is winding down, right? With the right person. And that's an irreplaceable thing. So you need to, you really do need to take this serious. Not too serious, but where you're anxious about it. But you need to pursue this and understand there's a very, very high return on your investment for the effort you're going to put in as an older man to get better at this shit. Really is. The worst thing you can do is not invest in yourself. And I mean, when I say invest, I mean money too, but I mean time, energy, whatever it is, in order to really learn what you need to learn. It's a really big mistake if you don't do that, because you're just going to rob yourself of what might be, some of the best years of your life. You're going to rob yourself of them by not learning you know what I mean? How to handle your shit better with women. Sounds like a dumb thing, but guys do it all the time. They don't learn. They don't do what they're supposed to. So yeah, man, just join the community. Ask this question. It's a great question, man. I unfortunately have to wind down here. I'm way over time for what I was going to spend. So like, just join. It's just like I said, post that same question, maybe a little bit more about your background. Okay. And we'll give you some advice there, and it's not going to cost you anything. If you decide to do a course later, I'll charge you millions of dollars for it. You know what I mean? I'm just kidding, obviously. So hopefully I'll see you there with that comment. What else we got here? Yeah, so Australia is experiencing it too. And I really do think it's correlated to lack of sunlight, lack of physical activity, poor diet, and toxins. But toxins are part of your diet. Like if you are running like super stud over here with his 11% body fat, like so super stud Ed, you know what I'm saying? So Ed here with his low body fat, he's got sorry, that's not even the right post. But whatever, man. This is the one. Where are you? Where are you? Oh, fucking shit. Anyway, that's a good one. All right. So Ed here, right? Like he takes care of his body at 11, 12, 13% body fat. You're not carrying the amount of toxins in your body that are in the environment that are going to bring your hormone levels to unoptimal places. Okay. If you're carrying 25% body fat, that's all of those environmental toxins get to sit into your adipose tissue and get released as you burn adipose into your bloodstream, and you're just more infiltrated with toxins. Now, that's a general idea. I am not a fucking doctor in that area or an MD that studies this. So I'm speaking very generally. There's more details and I only know enough to hurt myself. So, I can't get in the weeds with you about environmental toxins, okay? But I think what I'm saying is pretty much true, based on the things I've read. And so it just kind of makes sense. If you're just in better, I do know this piece 100%. If you're just in better shape, carrying less body fat, then that means that you're probably not eating like shit. And so your diet's not as inflammatory, as toxic. And so you're not then reducing your natural testosterone levels. The only element that you need to pay attention to is sunlight and vitamin D, because vitamin D and sunlight is a precursor to developing healthy testosterone levels. So, like, if you get enough sunlight, you get good vitamin D, you take care of yourself, you work out, you exercise, you dominate your life like a man, your T levels are going to be healthy. You're not going to be a problem. Most guys don't do anything I just mentioned, though. The average guy is missing at least one of the things I just mentioned there. And that's why their T levels suffer, right? And that's why it's happening all over the place. It's this fucking thing. It's your screen that you're in front of. Okay. And then everything that follows from that, that's why. That's why the testosterone levels have dropped. Look, we have another asshole in the comments section. You think that they would learn given the last time we had an asshole just the other day. And I pretty much made a pretty good example of him. And I'll make an example of you too. First of all, I don't have a beer belly, buddy. I'm fucking pretty jacked guy with a lot of muscle. I have some fat on me, a little bit, and I don't care. All you have to do is look at my receipts, and you can see I'm doing just fine. My health profile is fine. There's pictures of me all over the place. You can see that I'm pretty healthy, but I never claimed to be a looks max hot dude. You know what I mean? In fact, several times in this stream, I've said, I'm not this great looking dude. I'm just a dominant dude. Yet somehow girls find me attractive. Well, it's not magic. It's the things I'm telling you guys in this stream. I'm telling you the right things and I'm doing them. And then guys that come into my community, guys that hire me for coaching, guys that take my courses, guess what? They're doing them too. You, sir, are commenting on a YouTube channel on a Sunday night, a negative comment with a fake ass name and a fake ass avatar. So you're not even a real person. You, sir, and you are somebody who clearly doesn't get pussy. This is not the behavior of someone who gets pussy. This is not the behavior of someone who's happy with their life. This is not the behavior of somebody who is in any kind of shape. And I challenge any of you incel retards that want to comment on my shit to come find me in person and see how fat and out of shape I am in person. Maybe we can do something physical together that involves a serious ass beating from one of us. We'll see who fares well with that. We'll see who comes out on top. Your fake internet ass or me. We'll see how in shape I really am. You just come fucking find me, dude. Not that hard to find. But you won't, because you're a guy on the internet. You're fucking porn-brained, internet-brained, loser motherfucker. You're the exact guy I'm talking about. Okay. The guy that can't fuck his girl, and now girls are disgruntled. And that's it. I think it's a good place to close. Right? So, like, don't be this dude. I can't imagine feeling the need to put a negative comment on anyone's channel. But that's because I'm not a loser. So stop being a loser, man. Really. And start doing some better things with your life, you know? And for the rest of you, anyway, thanks for joining, and thanks for listening. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for the support. Thank you guys for, like I said, everything you do to help me. I try to do a lot of things to help you guys too. So again, jump on that community, get ready for this course. It's dropping soon. And I'll catch you tomorrow, maybe. All right. See you later.